Hello, and welcome to the Disclosure Dialogues. I'm your host, Lesley Klein, and I'm here to help you meet several Citizens for Disclosure state leaders. And this is our third episode, and this is post-UAP public hearings, which is the big news in the UAP world. So this conversation is not just amongst ourselves here, our 5 state leaders and myself, but this is actually a conversation with you, the viewers and the audience. I'm streaming to several places on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where the channel lives. And you can watch this live or on the replay. But as you're live, you can actually comment. So I'm going to have some polls that we will be putting on the screen that you can answer and ask questions. Please comment. This is meant to be a discussion amongst all of us about UAP and UFOs. So first, I'd like to introduce to you our first panelist, and he is Jerry Birdsall. Jerry is an author. He is the author of UAP Disclosure. He is a former intelligence analyst and also an NHI researcher, NHI meaning non-human intelligence. So he's coming to us from Connecticut, right? And
yes.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for being here. You're also volunteering for Citizens for Disclosure as the National Campus Outreach Coordinator. So welcome to the panel. I'm so eager to pick your brain. All right, next we've got Derek Birdsall. Derek is from Alabama. He is the Alabama Citizens for Disclosure state leader. He lives in Florence and works at a medical center there and has been researching everything about UFOs for the past 25 years. Derek was born in San Jose, California, and then moved to Arizona, which I believe you were there for 15 years, and now you reside in Alabama. So welcome, Derek, to the stage. All right.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Next, we've got Bruce Davis. So Bruce is here. He is the New York State leader for Citizens for Disclosure. He is a lifelong experiencer. He defines himself as a skeptic sympathizer and also a truth seeker. So thank you so much, Bruce, for being here. It's great to see you here. And you are also the co-leader with Sean Todorovich. There we go. Todorovich. Sean, I understand that you're from Brooklyn, New York, and you're a former New York City paramedic and also a healthcare consultant, as well as an activist. So thank you so much for being here. I know that you and Bruce work together on CFD, and you are all here, and let's see, we've got a comment. So here we go. Created Real Photo says, hey, Derek, I'm about to be moving to Alabama. We need to exchange information. So there you go. We've got people watching and participating. So what I want to do is ask this question to not only our audience, but to my panelists here. And this is the question. Which best describes you regarding, and this is in the UFO, UAP realm. Are you a UFO believer, an experiencer, just curious, a skeptic, or would you prefer not to answer? And so people watching, go ahead and put it in your comments and we could see your comments and count up how many different types of people we have. So let's go around the room. Jerry, are you an experiencer?
Oh, I've seen a few things. I've had a few things happen that I can't really explain. And I've been interested in investigating the subject for quite a long time.
Awesome. Okay. Derek, what about yourself?
I would say I'm definitely a believer. When I lived in Arizona for that 15-year time frame, I remember seeing lights over Luke Air Force Base. And just things that I just couldn't describe. And so yeah, I would say a little bit of both, experiencer and believer for sure.
Okay. Sean, what about yourself?
Definitely lifelong experiencer. I've been having experiences since I was a child. So I can't, even though I've had experiences since I was a child, I'm also a skeptic in the sense that integrating the meaning of these experiences is a lifelong process and there are no easy answers. Um, so I think it's definitely possible to be an experiencer and a skeptic at the same time.
Right, definitely. There are many layers to this interesting subject, right? Bruce, what about yourself? Go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. Are you an experiencer, a believer, skeptic?
Definitely an experiencer. I'm a believer. And like I said, I sympathize with people that are skeptical. Because, like Sean just mentioned, it's hard to really understand the purpose of your experiences and whatnot. And even why my camera keeps flipping. Some things are just hard to get to the bottom of.
Literally.
Interesting. Yeah, you might want to try flipping it again and maybe it'll get set right. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right, we've got a comment from Create It Real Photo. He says, I'm a believer. So far we've got that. And I'll keep the tally as we're going through the show. So that's so interesting. So we've got pretty much one. And for myself, I'll just say that I'm a believer. I'm not an experiencer yet, but I am open to wanting that experience. I haven't done the CE5 protocol yet with a group or anything. So I really haven't had that. I've done meditations and stuff, but for me, it's like one-on-one like communication. All right. So we are part of the New Paradigm Institute, and this is more for the benefit of the people watching so that you can understand what we're all about. So New Paradigm Institute has a specific mission, and that mission is to compel full and responsible UAP disclosure and prepare humanity for the cultural shifts following confirmed extraterrestrial contact. And so we've all been involved in this year. Here's the website for New Paradigm Institute. So our viewer has said that he wants to get a hold of Derek. Well, you can go to the new paradigminstitute.org and sign up for the newsletter and also sign up to become a volunteer and be part of our volunteer network. So I believe we've got 32 states that have state leaders so far. And we've been organizing really since, I think CFD really started maybe last fall, just a year ago. So a lot of exciting things happening with CFD and Citizens for Disclosure. CFD is short for that. So let's talk about the UAP public hearing aftermath. Jerry, I know you were there in person. Was anyone else here in person at the public hearings?
I was
or
not.
It just Jerry?
I wish I could have attended.
You were with me. You were with me. We were watching live.
Yeah.
So Jerry, since you were in the room where it happened, can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like? Have you been to other hearings like this, or was this the first one?
No, that was my first hearing. We didn't know how many people there was. Guessed that there might be a lot of people showing up for this one. So people started queuing up, believe it or not, around 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I got there about 6:30. I was about the 30th in line. And it's kind of a good thing. The guards didn't know. I said, how many people, will they let in? Because it was a smaller room where they had the hearing. And it could hold about 200 people. But as it turned out, there were quite a few reserved seats. So we, luckily, once you got let inside, you go through all the scanners and everything. We queued up again to the door where the hearing was going to be. And, they let people in a few at a time. And luckily, because I had gotten out of line, was talking to some people in the back, and then I was with someone, they said, we better go back where we were. And I said, we'll get in, don't worry, we're in. But as it turned out, only 4 people past me got in. And Chris Bledsoe didn't even actually get in. At any rate, so it was a sort of a fairly small room. Right away, Paulina came out swinging. She called John Kirkpatrick a liar, which was like, whoa, what a way to start, pretty much in the beginning. The testimonies were compelling. The questions that were asked were pretty good. I was expecting some deeper things, because David Grush had been, I guess, working with people on what questions to ask. And the time limit, it's kind of, frustrating. We got 5 minutes, and then, they ask for, later on, they ask for a little more time to do something. But, it's just all these constraints. It was interesting too afterwards, talking to people, seeing who was in the audience, and seeing the guys testifying. You could see that it was very emotional for them, to be doing the testifying. So it was quite an experience. I have to say I'm a little disappointed, where this is not going. I guess I should say, most likely it's not going to much happen from these hearings, unfortunately. But it is hopefully putting this on the radar for people who don't know what's going on and start hearing about this.
Do any of you other panelists have any questions for Jerry about being in the room?
Did you happen to have the opportunity to talk to any of the people, the panelists, after?
Yeah, afterwards I went outside and I saw Dylan Borland, and went up and shook his hand, and he was still like this, after testifying. And I said, I want to thank you for coming forward. And I also got to see Tim Burchett. He was alone in the hallway I was walking down. I said, I want to thank you, sir, for doing this. And he goes, it's Tim, just Tim. Robert Salas was there, and I also, really went up and said, geez, thanks so much. And you have to realize he had told this story back at the press conference that Dr. Stephen Greer held back in 2001, 24 years ago. And there were quite a few of these guys who, and women, of course, who were saying, I'll testify under Congress, to this effect. And, you're wondering why some of these people aren't called with this, the experiences that they've had. And a couple of those people, well, are gone now. A couple of them from questionable means, maybe. And, nobody's getting younger. So you wonder if they'll ever get to tell their story under oath.
Let me ask, well, actually, since we've got Young joining us, let me introduce her real quick. Young is with the Virginia State. She's a Virginia State lead along with Anthony Miller. And she was the former senior program manager for the Native American Lands Environmental Mitigation Program through the Department of Defense. And she is an Afro-Indigenous and an enrolled member of the Nottoway tribe of Virginia. She holds a master's in tribal law from the University of Oklahoma College of Law, along with a bachelor's of arts in women, gender, and sexuality studies from the University of Richmond. So thank you, Young, so much for being here and joining us. So we were just talking about the UAP hearing, and Jerry was in the room, and I understand that you were in there as well with Anthony. So can you share anything, any insights from being in the room, versus like we were watching, through the internet?
Sure. And sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I'm late. I have to be here, and thank you so much again, Lesley. Like I love just being on here and be able to talk to everyone, and you're just amazing. So I just got to say that. It was very cool being actually there in the hearing. It's almost like you could hear a pin drop at one point, like it's just because it's so tense in there. But I thought that being there in person was super, like, just eye-opening in the sense that, like, you don't get the same feeling like when you watch it from afar, because some of them I've watched. I've been to one other hearing, but this one is like, and being like straight up in that room, it was pretty wild. And I just seeing all the familiar faces in there and being able to hear directly and even watch the video there. It was just such an awe moment, for me. So yeah, that's just a little bit about how I felt anyways when I was in there. It was just super cool.
Great. Thank you for sharing. So Sean, were you able to watch the hearings?
Yes, I saw the hearings afterwards.
What did you think?
The interesting thing is that despite being an experiencer my whole life and ufologist, this is actually my first foray of getting into the government aspect of it. Now, before I was in the healthcare industry and I was an advocate for universal healthcare, so I am familiar somewhat with that kind of environment. But it's always been, I think, a challenge. This relationship between ufologists, experiencers, and government, and it's really hard to make heads or tails of it. I mean, I'm very familiar with the history, going all the way back to the 1940s. And we've had hearings, many hearings before. We had reports, and we seem to be kind of spinning our wheels. It's hard to tell when real progress is being made. And so for me, the barometer is more the public at large than what's happening in Washington, because it's always difficult to understand what these senators and representatives really mean with what they say, how much follow through they're going to have, and how much commitment is there going to be down the line. So it's just been that, so it's just that general comment that it's always hard to read government, and I always use the public more as a barometer in terms of progress than what's happening legislatively or otherwise.
Right. There's been a sentiment that says that the disclosure is actually going to come from the people, right, with their own interactions with the ETs over, like, institutionally. So I want to share that Dr. Melanie, she's one of the Florida co-leads for Citizens for Disclosure. She says she's glad to be able to listen in. All right. So, Bruce, what were your thoughts about the hearing?
Well, I was blown away, honestly, by the testimonies. It sounds like that we're getting, deeper into, how understanding how things operate. The one gentleman that came forward, I can't remember his name right now, but he definitely, helps us understand and see just how important these whistleblower protections are. His testimony about the things that he's endured since coming forward, that really, it was sad to hear that he went through that. And trying to understand still the true reason behind the secrecy. If it's as simple as, economics and profit over people, then it really is time to let some of these things come forward. But one of the things that I do perceive being an issue is the amount of discourse and social unrest, the amount of just division in the world. It will really be hard to even wrap your head about releasing some of these technologies, especially when it has to do with energy, when there's so much division. And that's the thing that's really been on my mind lately, is maybe how to find ways to remedy the amount of division that's happening in the world and promote more unity.
Yes. I think that's from the information that I've gotten from people who communicate with the ETs, they're more evolved than us. Most of them, is my understanding. They're spiritually more evolved, and they are just at a different level of peace. And I guess when you have higher evolved species, they've done away with war. That's not even an option. And so I'm hoping that they'll help us kind of get to that place. Jerry, since you've, I wanted to actually put your book on here, because I've been reading your book, and let's see how it'll work with the stage. Will it show? Yeah. Okay. So it's UAP disclosure, UFO secrets, whistleblowers, congressional hearings, and hidden technologies. And I think it just came out this year in May, right?
Yes.
And I loved it because it really helped me to kind of wrap my head around all of this. You name different players, different people, so we can kind of understand who's who in this, interesting mosaic that I think Dr. Greer likes to describe. We're getting all these pieces to trying to kind of put this puzzle together. So I wanted to see, since you've been, one of the things that I kind of gleaned from the hearings was that the fear that Dylan Borland expressed. I mean, he was like shaking in his boots, and that's what Matthew Brown has talked about, the national security state. And one of the, since these hearings, there've been all kinds of podcasters and in the UFO UAP world, including Jeremy Corbell, who did a long interview with Dylan Borland for and he had 2 long episodes, and he really talked about how it's, so if the whistleblowers are afraid of this national security state, and also the Congress people, and that's why they don't want to go, they go so far, but then they get their lives threatened as well. So Jerry, can you give us any insight into this dilemma that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, that's sort of, the launching point for the book, having worked in that environment, in the intelligence community with the TS/SCI clearance. People look at the government as being this monolithic thing that's all, marching in the same direction. Couldn't anything further from the truth. It's like anything else. It's a lot of smaller interests vying for money and power. And, you have to go back to, this started in 1947, when they formed the intelligence agencies, and things, have been compartmentalized, and people don't understand how can such a secret be kept secret for so long, this whole topic. And yeah, they don't understand that world, how compartmentalization works. They call it being siloed. You get one little tiny piece of the thing you work on, and you're not to talk about anything else or try to find out about it for that matter. You work within the realm you're given. And there's a question, though, that it's interesting. It's seldom asked and virtually never answered, is when you look at it, and again, people think, okay, a new president comes in, he gets briefed, he finally knows all the secrets. No, it doesn't work that way. It's based on a need to know. And so the question one has to ask, if the president is a temporary employee for 8 years max, who is it who gets to decide what they can get to know, and when they read people in? And getting read in to these things is kind of a long process. What will happen over several years is they'll give you little bits of things and see how you handle it. Because when I was there, I was getting things and I'm saying, oh, this is interesting. I mean, I'm into this. I know about this stuff, but why are they sending me stuff on this? It had to do with things like remote viewing and whatever, and psychic stuff. And, I started seeing code words that, I was beginning to wonder what's happening here. And basically what'll happen is they'll give you this, they'll see how you handle that. If you behave and, play ball, they'll give you some more. And it goes on and on until they think they can pull you in. And I know when I left, I was on the verge of being possibly moved into, working on those kinds of things. But I knew that I could not stand, I belonged to groups like, MUFON, Fund for UFO Research, the National Psychotronics Association, all these different organizations that were trying to liberate this. And maybe they thought I'd be a good mole, I guess. I don't know. But I knew I couldn't work in that world. So I went out too, and then I worked for Booz Allen for a while. And it wasn't until much later I realized that, Booz Allen even had a little part of this. But you have to realize that, geez, most of the major corporations, especially the aerospace ones, but any of these, the think tanks, they all have their own little piece that they're working on. And this is going on. It's to the point where it's really, and the people who've looked into it deeply usually come away thinking the same thing, that there's breakaway rogue elements of the government that, you know, we call them gatekeepers or bad actors or whatever, but they're keeping this from coming out. And they always, you know, say, national security can't let that out. You know, people can file patents, and if they think, oh no, can't let this out, bang, it's classified, you're done. So, you know, and unfortunately, what's been going on has been unconstitutional, illegal, not to mention immoral. And until enough people realize, and unfortunately, it gets even harder than that. In fact, Dr. Greer, a lot of people, you know, Danny Sheehan's talked about this as well, that the people who are really running things, you know, we tend to think really parochially here. It's all about America. It's not. This is, you know, obviously a worldwide global thing. And unfortunately, you know, the people we elect aren't the people who are really running things. Follow the money. It's the global elite. This is transnational. So you have essentially a transnational, you know, to look at it from the higher, kind of much higher perspective, and it gets rather grim. These people have the money, they've got the power, they've got exotic technology. We have the numbers. And, you know, that's about the only thing we have going for us. And until enough people this matters to, you know, getting congressional oversight and getting things under control. Right now, we're heading towards a constitutional crisis. And Danny talks about this quite a bit. It's a heavy lift to try to come to grips with this, but I think it's truly the most important thing that anybody could be working on. And this is really history in the making. I mean, it's amazing to think what a post-disclosure world will look like.
Derek, Sean, Young,
Wow.
Bruce, do you guys have any comments?
No, you know what? I'm just listening to everything. But it's absolutely wild. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Jerry, you're right. I mean, it's until this becomes an issue that is important enough to everybody, that's when you'll begin to see the change. But then the question becomes, how do you get people, you know, interested in this, right? Because for the past 80 years, you've been looked at as, you know, the tinfoil guy, or you watch too much sci-fi, and it's always been, you know, you watch a lot of Marvel movies. But in point of fact, I mean, you now have, you know, high quality individuals that have, you know, a pristine, you know, work reputation amongst their colleagues, and these people are coming forward and they're testifying to the veracity of statements that have already been made, right? So you first had David Grush that came out, and, you know, a lot of people were like, well, he's got secondhand information, but I mean, it was more information that we were getting out of Congress before, you know, previously. And when he testifies to the fact that, you know, after years of investigations and after talking to so many individuals, yeah, I can tell you that there are these legacy programs where reverse engineering of this technology is taking place. And then, you know, moving the needle forward, because for the longest time, you just had David Grush, who had officially testified. But yeah, you had, you know, Jake Barber, that, you know, come out and do News Nation. And then you also had Matthew Brown, who eventually came out. And I actually thought it was really exciting to see the progression of this, right? Because back in 2024 in November, when you had Michael Schallenberger present the Immaculate Constellation document, I mean, we didn't know that it was Matthew Brown that had given that document to him. And then, you know, further on, you see on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp that he steps forward and says, yes, I'm the one, you know, who puts that documentation together. And to see and hear his testimony was absolutely, you know, another win. And so this is just it's a slow progression. And I know Danny's covered this before, where it's this slow, this kind of slow rollout of disclosure, because again, you know, society as a whole does have to, you know, get acclimated to this new paradigm that we're going to be facing. Our institutions are going to have some time to catch up. So whether it is financial or geopolitical or spiritual, all of those different institutions are going to have to come together. And I think one of the hardest bites to take is the fact that those institutions have been complicit in moving this narrative forward, that we are alone and that this isn't real. And so how do we come to grips with that? And I think one of the more important aspects is when you're taking a look at the technology and what's available. I mean, obviously, we don't want to have electrogravitic technology available for everybody right out of the gate because of our situation as it sits in society and the way that we view things. But, you know, definitely things like the energy generation, that story about the USS Nimitz and how Kevin Day, the radar operator, had given that information to Dr. Kevin Knuth, right? The professor over at the University of Albany in New York. So when you're dealing with a machine that is, 40 feet in length, 32,000 pounds, travels 42,000 miles per hour, and you look at the energy output for that, and it comes to 1,100 gigawatts. And for reference, like in Arizona, the Palo Verde nuclear power plant generates about 3.3 gigawatts, and that serves roughly about 4 million people. So this one piece of technology just completely eradicated the need for, oil and gasoline and all these other, mechanisms that are in place for power. Our energy costs now go down to zero. Your food production costs, all of these things drop down dramatically. And I think that that's one aspect that the general public really should take into consideration, because everyone, not say everyone, but those that were speaking about, a Green New Deal, when we have a clean New Deal on the other side, right? Renewable energy source. And so that's why it's so important that we have individuals like Avilob, and you have the Soul Foundation, and you have, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies in Huntsville. We have scientists and engineers that are looking at this problem and getting down to the science of how this actually works. So when those physics come out and we have those appropriate individuals that are in place that understand the science of how this works and how we can move our society forward, I think that's the type of messaging that the general public needs to hear, because I think a lot of times we get caught up in the legal aspect of this, right? The legislation, the UAPDA, and it's getting held up in the Rules Committee, and it may not, what did Eric Burleson say, that that when he had put this forward, he had respected at least the germaneness of what he was talking about, and then a staffer or a series of staff just removed that content from the bill, stating that it was non-germane. These are the type of things that the general public has to understand about how this all works. And I think once we get those kind of things, kind of in place, or more like in the ether, in the sphere, I think you're going to see a lot more people step forward and want to address this issue, because they'll have the confidence in knowing that there are competent individuals in the right place who have the right accreditations, knowledge base to really address this issue in the way that it needs to be.
Okay, thank you. Some good points. Go ahead, Sean. You had your hand up.
Just like we said a few minutes ago about disclosure is not just the purview of the U.S. government or any government. And in the same way, this technology is not also just the purview of the United States or any government. I personally am aware of individuals that are working on this kind of technology. Without giving away too much, this technology did not originate from the government. So I do believe that just like disclosure will be ultimately a kind of a democratic process, I also think that these technologies are also going to be a part of a democratic process, because people outside of government, people outside of this, what you want to call a deep state, also have access to this technology, and that's not accidental. Because I think it would be, and I'm just trying, if you put yourself in the mind of, let's say, an alien and say, well, how would you accomplish disclosure on a planet like this? I mean, they surely are aware of the deep state and all these other things. And I think it's kind of obvious to assume that we're not left helpless here, that both disclosure and the accompanying technologies that are going to come with disclosure are going to be, in part, a democratic process where we, the people, are going to make contact, and we, the people, are going to have access to these technologies. And I think there is a part of the reluctance of the government to do anything is because I think on some level they know that. I think that they are in competition with us. There's sort of like a arms race, if you will, where they think that they can outpace their adversaries and their own public in this regard. I think my opinion is that ultimately these efforts will fail. But at the same time, it's important to raise awareness. And I think it's important to empower people with the knowledge that we do not have to depend on some corporation like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or the government to help us get through this. Of course, we should continue all our efforts to agitate the government and things like that. But at the end of the day, we should not forget that, this country was founded by we the people. And I think we the people have something to say about all this.
Definitely. Young, did you want to say something in response? Nope. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot, like that to say. And I'm like, for the last time I was on here, which was great, it's like, I kind of always go into this. So I'm going to try not to, because it's just hard, one, to like separate sometimes your experience as an experiencer, much like anyone else, like Sean says, and any of us, right, from the greater framework of what's happening, because it's a very intersectional issue that people are tackling from different areas and angles, and that's great. I agree with Sean that, looking to authority figures as monoliths of power and arbiters of the truth is not going to save you or help you. Looking inward will, right? And doing self-work and remembering again more of who you are and increasing your level of awareness of society and of yourself, right? So that you can show up for other people in different ways in your own communities. And, you take action to do these things, right? So I think that like coming to a newer sense of connectedness will help facilitate this in a different way. And being cool with accepting truth, no matter what it looks like, and how scary it can sometimes be and how enlightening it can also be, because we're complex beings, right? The NHI are too. And they just have higher levels of awareness that we're all trying to get to. And I think that's the foundation for us to segue and transition to this new sense of reality that some of us haven't been exposed to. And of course, we don't need the government to tell us. So I totally agree.
I wanted to talk about the extraterrestrial agenda, because that's one of the things that Danny mentioned. One of his talks he did, what do you guys, some of you are experiencers. Jerry, you've been in the intelligence field for a long time. What can you guys share regarding the ET agenda?
Well, I think it's good definitely to stay open. Don't have your mind made up. I mean, I try to take it. I listen to everything. Okay, take that with a grain of salt, put it aside. We'll see. I mean, there's enough going on. I've come to the tentative conclusion that a lot of this is extra-dimensional, interdimensional, intra-dimensional. I mean, there's all the different various theories of ultra-terrestrials and on and on and on. But all this, we need to stay open to all the possibilities here. It's not just an ET thing going on, and I think the things do get conflated. That what happens sort of, we might have called supernatural, spiritual kind of things, get mixed in with this. A lot of things with orbs. I was just at a show this weekend, and there was a person there, and he ended up putting a security camera in his bedroom because he had all these orbs showing up all the time. And yeah, he got them on camera. I've seen people, I get them on camera a lot. And orbs seem to be different things. It doesn't seem to always be the same thing coming from the same place. It's interesting that one of the orbs he had, and I've seen pictures of other people who've had this, it looks like an interdimensional thing. You can see faces in there, and they're at all different angles, and it's like looking at something that's coming from a higher dimensional space. I think too, the more and more people who start doing CE5s, I've been doing them for a while, and you start seeing things, especially if you look in the infrared or the ultraviolet, you start seeing things that aren't there in the visible. And I get these flashers a lot if other people have seen them. You're looking, you're asking, and all of a sudden you get pow, it looks like a flash bulb that goes off. And the light quality is sort of interesting. It's not a geosynchronous, these people who try to explain it away. No, it's not a satellite, because it may move just a tiny bit and stop again. And it does seem to be something that's fairly high up. and just to sort of finish this off, I think disclosure, to be honest, the reason it's not happening is if all the dirty deeds people find out that have gone on over the decades, it's hard. I think they want to run the clock out and have a lot of these people be gone by the time they have to deal with it. It's a lot of things, right up to, again, to get into the heavy stuff, but it's people having physical, threatening things happen to them. And I mean, well, Dylan Borland was talking about having his brake lines cut and things like that. This goes on. It's that. And then people are going to say, well, if we've been lied to about this, what else have we been lied to? I think there's that. And it's also, what can the government do about interdimensional and intradimensional things? Yeah, you hear stories that are playing around with this portals being opened, this, that, and the other. But the bottom line is they can't, our military can't protect us from these things really. And they'd have to say, hey, we're just, we really don't know. But they, and again, who knows what? There are people who do know certain things. But again, there are no UFO experts. I crack up when I hear that term. Nobody can tell you definitively what's going on. There are people with parts of it, some more than others, but we have a long way to go before we can really understand this.
Yeah, and you know what, Jerry, to that point, that's one thing that I've learned in researching and taking a look at this subject is that, more than one thing can be true. And going back to when I first got started, I remember bumping into David Icke's material. So then the narrative was that there's, a species of shape-shifting, reptilians that, interbreed with certain families that connect all across the world. And so then that was the narrative that I was aware of, for a while. And then you come across, well, there's also like a hybridization program going on in which they're mixing their genetics and, with ours. And then, there's the age old, right, going back to the people of Anu, the Anunnaki that, created, man, or at least modified the hominid that was here in order to do a certain task, whether it was mining gold. So, I think in the wide chasm of things, maybe a little bit of all of those things have some truth in it. And I hope that eventually, that truth will come out, or that history will begin to emerge, because like you said, I 100% agree. There are no UFO experts. No one, at least that's come forward and at least has the ability to not only articulate what the narrative is, but then more importantly, well, can you prove it? And I think that's where it's at right now. We're all just looking for the proof, and not just proof as in like testimony, but obviously, yeah, we want, those physical artifacts, and maybe, archaeology will help us out in that mold as, as the planet, begins to change and ice begins to melt. Maybe there might be, certain areas that become available. And then that opens up the conversation about what is the actual nature and history of our species. Because again, maybe we've just been lied to about everything just in general, right? There's some aspect of truth that makes the reality work. But for the most part, it seems to be just a misleading situation all the way around. And the best thing that we can all do is at least become aware of what these various narratives are, so that when, whatever side of this situation decides to step forward, the gatekeepers that want to slow roll this out, if we get told that, 3i Atlas is now, a mothership, and that they're going to, be dropping these craft, but you're also aware of this Project Bluebeam concept in which you now have, holograms and all of these technical components. It's just, I think it's really important to just be aware of what these things are, so that when the future does come, you'll have better discernment. Because I agree with Young 100% that if you don't look deep within yourself and you don't get to know who you are, your surroundings, and get, your vibration to the point that, you can get with that stillness, it's going to be really difficult to have discernment when there's a lot of chaos that's happening around you.
Sure. Go ahead, Sean.
I'm going to use the analogy of psychedelics. When you have a profound psychedelic experience, for example, you use the term agenda. It's hard to say that there is any agenda. It's sort of like asking, what's the, if there's a hurricane coming to your town, what's their agenda, right? It's almost, evolution is a kind of a force of nature, and you could apply that to cultural revolutions as well. People have individual goals. Obviously, societies have certain mores and customs, etc. But cultures evolve kind of the way species evolve. in terms of using the word agenda, I think it's very difficult. I think it's, nobody asked the dinosaurs, what's the agenda? What are we going to be doing 50 million years from now? I'm not sure that the universe works kind of like that. Things unfold based on a complex set of variables. And I think it's our kind of human nature to try to have simple answers for everything. And this is why I agree with both of the previous statements about nobody's an expert in this field. And it's because, I think nature in itself refuses to have itself explained in that way. I don't know if evolution has an agenda. I don't think that the NHIs have an agenda in the way that we understand them. I think that it's more of a kind of a evolutionary process that's been going on eternally, and that we're just part of it. And I think the only thing we can do is try to understand more, be more self-aware of how we're evolving. And that's the way I prefer to think about it.
Awesome. Yeah, when I say the extraterrestrial agenda, meaning, why are they here? But the thing is, there's so many different civilizations, right? There's not just one ET race. There's several. They're all at different stages of evolution. I'm sure they're themselves. I'm guessing that some of them work together. We hear about the Galactic Federation and all this, but it's hard to know, like, what exactly is truth. When you're an experiencer, you have your experience and you have your truth and your understanding, from that experience. So it's really
right. And I'd just like to quickly add, both from my own experience and from what I've read about other experiencers, there may be in our own galaxy thousands of spacefaring races. Now, let's just assume for a second that that's true. It's hard to say what would the agenda be of 3,000 civilizations, all interacting somehow in a giant galaxy. I mean, I think we as humans are so used to being so small that we can't think in those kind of large terms. That we can barely get cooperating with our neighbors, let alone with potentially thousands of other spacefaring races in the galaxy. So I think that's part of the growth process for us over here is to just be able to conceptualize that, hey, we may be part of a very large matrix and we're just as part of it, and then, the universe doesn't revolve around us. We're just part of it, revolving around it.
Here's a comment from Eric Eisenman. He says, I think different groups have different agenda, though they could all want to preserve the petri dish that is Earth. Yeah, and Eric also said earlier, he was initially somewhat disappointed that George Knapp was a panelist. Dropping Greg Gaffney's name was pretty interesting, though. Greg Gaffney, I heard him drop the name. Who knows about him?
Yeah, former CIA head. Those are the hostile witnesses. Call the CEO of Lockheed. Or those, start getting those people to. But what they can always say, we can't talk about that, and they're kind of right. They're caught in a catch-22 because they were told to keep it secret. And Borland made an interesting point. He said, technically, when they get up there and say there's no proof of extraterrestrial, technically, from a very conservative, scientific framework, the only way you could prove it is to go there and bring something back. Otherwise, you don't have, 100%, undeniable proof. So, it's a tough thing. But when they hide behind stuff like that, you really begin to lose faith in the process.
I just want to quickly say that the absolute proof is not a standard anywhere on this planet. It's not a standard of the scientific process. It's not a standard of the legal process. And I think that's exactly right. They're just hiding behind that. But if you get convicted, to be convicted of murder, you just need to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In science, there's the, sigma 1, 2, 3, whatever. There's no such thing as, undeniable proof. And I think it would be foolish for anybody to come out there and say that, we've got, unqualified proof that.
Yeah, you know what, you're right, and that's what I can appreciate too, especially when it comes to like this latest hearing, is that if you were to look in the background, right, for all of our audience that's watching, like in the background, you can see, Danny Sheehan in the background. You have Jaime Maussan in the background. If you're not familiar with the Boogosphere from Colombia, so like he's back there. You saw Matthew Brown that was back there, Jeremy Corbell. Even Kevin Wright, right, our policy liaison from New Paradigm Shift, was actually in the audience in the back, and Jim Garrison is back there. And so, I think the things that we can focus on, and when we're reaching out to people to get them interested in the subject, it's, you're working with New Paradigm Institute and Citizens for Disclosure, and you're actually working with an organization that's actually reaching out and speaking to these individuals about these subjects, and our people are in the appropriate places doing the appropriate things. And so when people, I guess, I don't know if they get overwhelmed, looking at all of this, and then they resort to, nothing's ever going to work because the government's never going to come forward. But you're right, it's not going to come from them, obviously, but you're giving them enough rope to hang themselves, right? Because all of these things are coming to pass. And then when you pay attention and you look back and you see the missteps that were made, and you're like, well, why would you deny this? I mean, if people are coming forward, Senate Bill 3111 with Whistleblower Protection Acts, and we're looking for remedies that these individuals, will have some type of recourse to go back and be justified, right, in what they've been saying. Those are the type of things that, like, I'm thinking about in my head when it came to like that hearing, is trying to find a way to, condense a 4-hour hearing into something that's smaller and digestible, that you can get to the general public so that they can see the connections and see why, all of these whistleblowers are important, and why people like Danny Sheehan, that's, navigating the legal framework of this issue as he works with Eric Burleson, because, when you see all of those connections, and then those connections can come back to somebody who's local as a state lead, to be able to say, we can together begin solving this problem, and you start seeing a path forward. That's the kind of positivity that obviously the elites and these gatekeepers don't want. They want everything to seem like it's impossible, but I'm seeing it happening, right? I never thought that I would actually be talking to a legislative director and informing them about the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Disclosure Act, and why you need to put it in the NDAA, and what is happening. And these people that aren't familiar, I'm like, well, let me follow up with you. I will give you some material and information. If you have any questions, I will put you in contact with the appropriate individuals. But in the meantime, let's just foster a relationship, because it does come down to looking at, constituents in districts, and sometimes politicians, that's all their mind goes through is this vote going to get me in? Well, great. I'm glad we're on that footing, because now it's to the point where, I can go out and say, if these people, these individuals that are running for a seat in the Senate, if they want my vote, how educated are they with the UAPDA, and what is their position on that? Because this is the most consequential piece of legislation humanity has ever taken a look at. I know I speak relatively small as far as the United States. This is a global issue, but this is where I live at, so this is where I'm happening. And so, being able to do that, I think, is going to shift and move the needle more and more and more. It's just being disciplined. And last thing I'll say is this, and to not be disheartened by this, because I think, feeling that disappointment is understandable, because we want this now. Some of us have been looking at this for decades and actually been closer, but you can't give up, because you also have to think about other individuals who are actually closer to the heat, individuals, who has lost loved ones or lost friends or had tragedies happen in their life, and they're still continuing to push. And if these individuals at that level can be able to continue to push, then Citizens for Disclosure is really easy. All I'm doing is going out into the general public and trying to educate them about something that's coming down the pipe, not because I read a bunch of books, but because I'm looking at the actions that are being taken by Congress. I'm taking a look at the people in the intelligence community who are stepping forward, the type of plans that are being put in place to facilitate the safekeeping of these whistleblowers. And then also, not just that, but what happens after disclosure? What is going to be the plan to help those people deal with the ontological shock? And do we have, mental health professionals on standby? And are we making those moves to put society, at least doing our part, to do what we can to make sure that when this all does hit, we can all help our communities and our neighbors and our loved ones try to adjust to all of this without so much fear? Because we get it's going to be scary in the beginning, But that's just part of being an adult. It's part of maturing. And that's what humanity is doing right now. We are maturing out of this small globe that we're in into the concept that, you know what, we are part of something bigger than we could ever have imagined.
Perfect. You brought us to the post-disclosure world and what that would look like. So I've heard the terms catastrophic disclosure, intelligent disclosure, grassroots disclosure. What do you guys think about what the post-disclosure world will look like?
Wild and insane.
Well, what it could look like. Yeah, I mean, again, I think Steve Greer was the first person I heard, really speak to this about if the energy part of it could be liberated, because the propulsion part, again, can be weaponized. And unfortunately, that's the first thing that seems to happen with the technologies. What's the best weapon we can make with this, unfortunately? But the energy part of it, I mean, in 20 years or so, 2 generations, we could have solved a lot of climate problems, food problems. It would be the things that people who were abducted. I worked with Bud Hopkins early on, looking at his data, and the people who were coming forward early on. This is like the early 80s. And if people remembered something, even if it was under hypnosis, there were 2 takeaways where there seems to be, sort of universally. One, you're not taking good care of this planet. You got to do a lot better. And the second is nukes are not a good idea, because you don't know what they really do, how destructive they are. A lot of the other things people are getting, I think it would be interesting to really try to correlate, because a lot of people are getting things, and it would be interesting to see, how much else might correlate with what they're getting. But a post-disclosure world, I mean, besides the fact that, we could really truly, until we can stop having, wars here on the planet and function, as a class 1 civilization, it's hard to imagine things changing very much when, so much money's made from having wars. But geez, I mean, it's just incredible when you start thinking of what can happen with exchange programs and learning about, the way they see the universe and creation and how, how things work. It's mind-boggling. And all the institutions, like Derek was saying, I mean, what we're trying to do is really look ahead. Okay, hopefully this is going to happen, and how are all the institutions going to fare? What do they need to do to adapt? And I think I think that they'll hopefully look back and say it's a good thing some people were thinking of this, because it could end up being pretty catastrophic.
Exactly. Any other thoughts?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sean.
It's easy to think of disclosure as before and after, like BC and AD. But from my perspective, learning about this subject, it seems to me that disclosure is probably in the near term decades old, and probably centuries or maybe even thousands of years old. I think what we're seeing now is the end of a very long process of disclosure, because I don't think it's possible to go to any place, let's say, that had zero knowledge and was not ready at all for this kind of event, and just simply show up with your UFO and land in the middle of a planet and say, hey, listen, we're going to do things a little differently now. I don't think that's how it works. I think it takes a very long time for young species like us to acclimate ourselves to the new reality. And so I don't think that there's going to be one single moment where everything changes. I think that it's going to come in stages, and I think it's going to and this is, of course, deliberate, because I don't think that it's going to take, a year or 10 years. I think it's going to take generations to integrate this kind of a change on a planetary scale. But to answer your question more directly, I think that the immediate impact, I think, is going to be just simply a psychological shift. The idea that, it's always been my sort of belief that the only thing we actually need is simply a model, to witness somebody else doing it better in order to really motivate ourselves to accomplish something. I think it's very easy to demotivate people, and I think it's very easy to be cynical and to give up. But if you actually get to see a different civilization and see that they have their act together, just witnessing that, just knowing that, just seeing that, I think is going to be transformative, because I think people will then start believing it's like, you know what, this can be done. And, because somebody else has done it. And I think that alone is going to be something that is going to be really crucial for us going forward. And obviously technology, and stuff like that is important, and that technology always changes societies. But more than anything else, I think it's that perspective, that belief that you can have a different world is going to be transformative.
That's a good point. Young or Bruce, do you have any thoughts on
I'm just over here.
post-disclosure?
Bruce just wants to get his camera to work.
Poor guy.
Times.
Yeah, but man, this is one of the things through all of this. We got to remember to have fun. And all the things that we enjoy about life. I honestly believe some disturbing things will, come forward. And we might go through some rocky times. But at the end of the day, the good things about life are what we need to focus on. I would love to see a huge shift in people's awareness and understanding, and us avoid all these things that people predict that we may be facing the way it looks right now. And the only way to do that is to start having more open discussions about topics like these. I think it would really put things in perspective if people just actually, more people really looked at this situation and understood how real it is and how just huge it is compared to us. We'll see what happens, man. But I hope things go smoother than a lot of people anticipate.
Young, I'll let you share any last thoughts.
In a post-disclosure world,
Well, it's different for you as an experiencer because they're there. You've interacted with them,
yeah,
right?
but it's so and just from my perspective and like just knowing my experience being in these positions in DoD and stuff, it's like we see one frame, but the whole goal, right, as a human is to gather lots of perspectives, right? So you have lots of eyes that can help get you closer to the truth of what's really going on and how you can navigate it, right? It's your compass, like you're creating that. The more that you interact with other people. And so for post-disclosure world, I would hope that people become more curious about life and everything in general, right? Things that they forget they should be curious about right now, right? I mean, they could look to their left and their right across the globe and see that there's things that you could be more curious about, because this is why those wars are happening and the crimes that we have happen, right? People refuse to be curious about the larger reality. Reality has always been this way. It's just remembering how big it is, right? Nothing's really going to be new under the sun. It's just how much you're prepared to see it, right? So my hope is that people remember how important curiosity is in individual accountability and collective accountability and reciprocity for the place that you share with other beings, even your own relatives that are humans here. That's what my hope is for a post-disclosure world, because this is the only way we can truly facilitate a new world where we have all these things and we can live in a radically transparent and honest way, right? Because people want all these things, right? They're ready for all this and even these abilities, right, that we're tapping into. Like a lot of us have espoused or have experienced too. It's like, but until we can grasp loving another person and having compassion for them and yourself, you can't do that, right? So I definitely agree with Bruce on that. Like, it's kind of rocky, like it's just depending on what people's choices are, right? Because a new world is a choice away. You having a new life experience is a choice away. But you got to choose when to do it. The action is what's most important, right? You can think about this and conceptualize and be theoretical all you want, but like in my experience as being also a teacher, the lesson plan isn't going to go how you think it is, right? That's not reality. That these kids come from different backgrounds. Again, they have intersectional identities that influence how my teaching is going to roll out, right? You got to think about that. Like, theory and practice are two different things. And that's what's happening right now. It's like we're getting our toes wet as experiencers. It's like, which again, I think it's orchestrated this way because it's a lot, right? And I just hope that this puts the impetus on people to light the fire back under them, and that like they can, you have the actually ability to do a lot of things that you thought that you couldn't do, and we can do them together,
Right.
So that's my hope for a post-disclosure world, because I think it will help shock them a little bit enough. If like, even though it's like for a lot of us, it's like the world isn't shocking enough to get you there, but like for these people who are like ignoring every sign that they can, I hope that it does.
Got it. Well, I do want to share that there's going to be a Global Disclosure Day on October 19th. And this is really exciting that NPI, New Paradigm Institute, is putting this on. And the way to sign up, I have a tinyurl link that will get people where you can sign up, tinyurl.com/capital GVTV, Global Disclosure Day, all in lowercase. So this, I wanted to share some notes about this Global Disclosure Day. They have like 3 segments, and they're going to talk about the UFO, UAP history, the investigations, the disinformation, and recent breakthroughs. Segment 2 is about framing disclosure as a grassroots movement for truth and accountability. And then the third segment is a panel moderated by Dr. Jim Garrison. He's with Ubiquity University, and they will feature Richard Dolan, Colonel Carl Nell, Danny Sheehan, Representative Eric Burleson, Russ Colehart, Anna Brady Estevez, Reed Summers, Chris Bledsoe, Christian Fisher, and many more. So they're modeling this panel on the UAP Records Review Board concept. And then they'll close the day with reflections by Dr. Jim Garrison and Danny Sheehan. So yeah, there's that's coming up. And let's see, we've got Great at Real Photo says he's already signed up. So yay. So this is where people can sign up, and I'll put that link right there again. This is really great. And Global Disclosure Day has to do, October 20th was the deadline that the UAP Disclosure Act from last year, that's what the deadline was, October 20th, and that's when NPI did this Global Disclosure Day. It's from 1 to 5 in the afternoon, Eastern time, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's really going to be informative, especially after post, this UAP public hearing. I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say, because it's like we're all digesting what's happened and trying to figure out, okay, what's the next step? Keep moving forward, keep educating. And I know that's what New Paradigm Institute is doing, what we're all working on. All right, my friends. So I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. And any last thoughts before we leave from our panelists?
Yeah, I don't think it's an accident that we have so much activity going on right now. It does seem like things are accelerating. Just always tell people, keep your eyes on the skies and keep an open mind and go with the flow. I think we make it through this. Consciousness is going to go through a serious upgrade.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add in really quick that it's all progress that has to move going forward. And if you want to get in contact, I know one of our viewers said he's moving to Alabama, but you can always email me at alabama@citizensfordisclosure.com and go from there. And in the meantime, in each of our states, we are all beginning to start doing hosting parties and doing different events to engage the public. I know me personally, I've reserved a room at the Florence Library here in Alabama. And so like on on October 18th, I will actually be doing a presentation at the library at 1:00. I'm going to continue to do these every so often, maybe twice a month, and just kind of going through the general understanding of getting people caught up, where we are at, who are the individuals involved, what institutions are at play, what organizations are working together, and just continue to provide that information to the general public. And hopefully, if we do this long enough, that information will be seeded throughout our consciousness. And so whenever the future happens, whatever it may be, we will all, to an extent, be generally prepared to at least begin to accept this information and really take that change that we're all looking for in a post-disclosure world.
Thank you. All right. Any other thoughts?
I just want to say that curiosity, absolutely. And curiosity goes together with education. It's important for people to get educated on this subject and to be curious. And because this is, I can't think of anything that will be more impactful in our near future than this subject. So, go out there, be curious.
Younger Bruce, any last thoughts?
Oh, man, I just want everybody to know I love you guys. And, as long as we stick together and keep pushing forward, I think things have a good chance of being, it's a smooth transition through disclosure. So let's hope for the best. And,
thank you. Young, anything? I didn't want to leave you hanging if you wanted to say something.
No, just thank you, Lesley, always for hosting this and just being awesome. And thank you, everyone. And I love you as well. Because Bruce, I love you so much. And Derek and Jerry and Sean, like the CFD team, I'm just so grateful for all of y'all and to know you all and to have other people that I'm like, I don't have to feel alone, again, because we're all doing this together. And it's like, I got to finally meet some of you, like Jerry, I got to meet him, I was so excited. And I'm just super grateful for this time because it's like, you wait for this your whole life. And it's like, I think even more cool than even NHI and UAPs is like people coming together, like, and remembering that we're one family, and that doesn't have to be divisive, so super grateful.
Well, thank you. And I'm grateful for each of you. Thank you so much, panelists, for being here. Our next episode will happen on November 12th. So we'll do another disclosure dialogue then. So thank you everyone for watching, and remember to keep looking up. We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Bye.